As the world grapples with the resurgence of great power rivalries and the erosion of the post-Cold War security architecture, the relationship between the United States and Russia has emerged as a focal point of concern. The two nations, once bound by a delicate balance of nuclear deterrence, now find themselves navigating a treacherous landscape of mistrust, competing interests, and the ever-present specter of nuclear escalation. In the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent breakdown of arms control agreements, the risk of a catastrophic nuclear confrontation between these two nuclear superpowers has become an increasingly pressing issue. Policymakers, analysts, and scholars from various corners of the globe have weighed in on the factors that could potentially draw the United States and Russia into a nuclear conflict, each offering a unique perspective shaped by their respective geopolitical vantage points. For many observers, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine represents the most significant flashpoint for a potential nuclear confrontation between the United States and Russia. As the war drags on, the risk of miscalculation or unintended escalation looms large, with both sides seemingly unwilling to back down from their entrenched positions. In a recent analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, Nicholas Adamopoulos, an associate fellow and associate director with the Project on Nuclear Issues, warned that as Russia grows more desperate to conclude the conflict on favorable terms, it may look to increasingly extreme means to achieve increasingly improbable ends. This sentiment echoes the concerns of many analysts who fear that a cornered and desperate Russia might resort to the use of tactical nuclear weapons as a last-ditch effort to break the stalemate. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, ISS, has also weighed in on the Ukraine crisis, suggesting that, to maximize its chances of victory, high levels of attrition should be privileged over mobility and direct attack. This perspective underscores the potential for a protracted, attritional conflict that could escalate beyond conventional warfare if either side perceives an existential threat to its core interests. Beyond the immediate flashpoint of Ukraine, many experts point to the broader breakdown of arms control agreements and the erosion of trust between the United States and Russia as a significant driver of nuclear tensions. As the two nations abandon long-standing treaties and agreements, the delicate balance of deterrence that once kept the nuclear genie in its bottle is rapidly unraveling. In a sobering analysis by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICON, the organization warned that the risk of nuclear war has increased dramatically in the past 2 years as the United States and Russia have abandoned long-standing nuclear arms control treaties, started to develop new kinds of nuclear weapons, and expanded the circumstances in which they might use nuclear weapons. This assessment underscores the growing sense of uncertainty and instability that has accompanied the collapse of the arms control regime. The German Council on Foreign Relations, DGAP, has also weighed in on the issue, arguing that the West, and in particular the EU and NATO, needs to invest in supporting Ukraine and its own security in the long term to deter further Russian aggression and prevent a potential nuclear escalation. This perspective highlights the need for a coordinated and robust response from the West to counter Russia's increasingly assertive posture and restore a sense of deterrence and stability. Beyond the specific flashpoints and strategic calculations, many analysts point to the deeper ideological divide and the broader context of great power competition as potential drivers of a nuclear confrontation between the US and Russia. In the eyes of some observers, the clash between the liberal democratic values espoused by the United States and the authoritarian model championed by Russia represents an existential struggle over the future of the global order. As Rep. Mike Gallagher, RWIs, asserted during a House Select Committee hearing, this is an existential struggle over what life will look like in the 21st century, and the most fundamental freedoms are at stake. This perspective resonates with those who view the US-Russia rivalry through the lens of a new Cold War, one in which the two superpowers are vying for global influence and ideological dominance. In this context, the potential for miscalculation or escalation is heightened, as each side seeks to assert its power and protect its perceived interests. Amidst the chorus of concerns and dire warnings, there are also voices of caution and restraint, urging both sides to exercise prudence and pursue diplomatic solutions to diffuse tensions. In a Washington Post opinion piece, John K. Culver, a former CIA National Intelligence Officer for East Asia, expressed skepticism about the assumptions underlying many worst-case scenarios. It seems odd that war with China over Taiwan seems a comfortable assumption for so many when the US and NATO remain cautious about Russia's war in Ukraine precisely because of the perceived risk of nuclear escalation, Culver wrote. Similarly, some analysts argue that the rhetoric surrounding a potential US-Russia conflict often overlooks the shared interests and mutual deterrence that have historically prevented direct military confrontation between nuclear-armed powers. As the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace notes, the majority of those who support the special operation explain their position in terms of protecting the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine. This perspective suggests that both sides may be more inclined to pursue diplomatic solutions and avoid escalation, even in the face of heightened tensions. As the debate over the potential for a US-Russia nuclear conflict rages on, it is clear that the path forward will require a delicate balance of diplomacy, deterrence, and risk mitigation strategies. On the diplomatic front, many experts emphasize the need for sustained dialogue and confidence-building measures to reduce the risk of miscalculation and escalation. This could involve establishing clear lines of communication, setting mutually agreed-upon rules of engagement, and exploring avenues for cooperation on issues of shared concern, such as climate change and global health. At the same time, maintaining a credible deterrent and robust defensive capabilities is seen as essential to dissuading aggression and preserving the delicate balance of power. This may involve continued investment in advanced military technologies, strengthening alliances and security partnerships, and developing comprehensive contingency plans for potential conflict scenarios. Perhaps most crucially, there is a growing recognition of the need to mitigate the risks associated with a potential nuclear exchange. This could involve measures such as hardening critical infrastructure against electromagnetic pulse, EMP attacks, developing robust emergency response and recovery plans, and exploring arms control agreements to limit the proliferation of nuclear weapons and delivery systems. As the world grapples with the looming specter of a potential US-Russia nuclear conflict, it is clear that the stakes have never been higher. The narratives and perspectives surrounding this existential threat are as diverse as they are consequential, reflecting the complex web of strategic interests, ideological differences, and great power dynamics that underpin this pivotal geopolitical relationship. Yet amidst the cacophony of voices and the clash of competing narratives, there is a shared responsibility, a collective imperative to pursue peace, stability, and mutual understanding. For it is only through sustained diplomacy, open dialogue, and a commitment to risk mitigation that we can hope to navigate the treacherous waters of great power rivalry and avert the unthinkable consequences of a nuclear exchange. As we look to the future, it is incumbent upon leaders, policymakers, and citizens alike to embrace this responsibility, to reject the siren song of conflict and confrontation, and to chart a course towards a more peaceful and prosperous world. For in the end, the specter of nuclear conflict between the United States and Russia is not merely a geopolitical challenge, but an existential threat that transcends borders and ideologies, demanding a collective response rooted in wisdom, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to the preservation of human civilization.